Hi, welcome to Quick Business Tips. I'm Jennifer Swineford, founder of Limitless Impact Agency, and this is the podcast for service-based business owners who want to grow their business without losing the heart behind it. Every week, I'm bringing you real practical strategies on marketing, sales, and customer experience. No fluff, no hustle culture nonsense, just what works. So let's get into it. We spent the last 2 months looking at clarifying and amplifying your business. These two things are getting your message right and becoming more visible, building the trust that brings the right clients into the door. And now I want to talk to you about the multiply stage of your business. During this month, we're going to have conversations about what happens after someone says yes, because saying yes is just the starting line. So today I want to talk to you about onboarding, and I want to start with a story that didn't go the way anybody planned. A few years ago, I took on a new client. They came to me in a pretty tough spot. They were in the middle of firing their previous marketing agency, and the situation was, let's just say, messy. The agency that they were leaving refused to hand over logins, wouldn't provide access to their website, their ad accounts, their analytics. And then, after weeks and weeks of back and forth, the agency stopped responding altogether. Now, this put my new client in a really difficult position. Their marketing was being held hostage by the people that were supposed to be taking care of them to begin with. And since they weren't, they were leaving. But I was the person they had hired to help them move forward. And I had very little that I could really do for them while we couldn't log into a lot of their socials. We couldn't get into the back end of their website. It was a mess. It took 3 months, 3 months of dribbling in bits and pieces of different platforms that we were slowly given access to. 3 months of rebuilding any access that we could and recreating what we couldn't, working around walls when we couldn't tear them down. And what I did during the situation is I stayed in constant communication with the client who had every reason to be beyond frustrated with the entire situation. But at the end of those 3 months, when we finally had everything we needed, my client said something to me that I'll never forget. She said, "The way you handled this has made me a client for life." And I'm happy to say that she is still one of my clients. But here's what I want you to get out of the story. She didn't come to me and tell me that the onboarding went smooth. She didn't say that everything went according to plan. She saw how I handled a difficult situation, and that made her a client for life. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. Not a checklist, but who the character in your business is behind the checklist. First, let's talk about why the onboarding experience is so important for service businesses specifically. When someone hires you, they are already in a heightened state. It may not be a negative state, but they're definitely in a heightened state. There could be excitement, relief that they finally made the decision. They finally hired someone. Now they're ready to move forward. But there's something underneath that excitement, and that's vulnerability. They've handed you something. It might be their home, their business, their money, their reputation, and now they're waiting. And that space in between, I signed the contract and I can see this working, that is the waiting period where trust is either built or lost. And for so many service businesses, it's the most neglected part of the entire customer interaction. Think about the last time you hired someone to do a major service for you. Do you remember how you felt that first day or the first week The little moments where you wondered if you'd made the right decision, hired the right person, the text that you wrote but didn't send because you didn't want to be annoying, and the reassurance that you were maybe hoping for but didn't know how to ask for. Now imagine your customer in that situation because your customer are feeling all those feelings too. And the service businesses that understand this, they are the ones that show up proactively in that window of time. They communicate before they're asked any questions. They make the client feel like they made the right decision before any work even starts. Those are the businesses that create clients for life. And the ones that don't focus on this, they deliver great work and they might still lose the client because the experience that the customer had when they were working with them felt a little uncertain. The customer never really felt fully relaxed in the relationship. So let me give you a little framework for what to think about during your onboarding that's far more useful than any 10-point checklist. Great onboarding accomplishes just three things. And if you are doing your onboarding and you're getting all three things done, you are building a foundation for a client relationship that generates referrals, renewals, and reviews long after the project's completed. The first thing you have to do during onboarding is confirm the decision. The moment someone signs the contract with you, there's a little voice in their head that starts second guessing. That's just human psychology. So the very first thing you have to do is get that voice to shut up. Give the customer early evidence that they have made the right call. They've hired the right person. This doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't have to be a whole big thing. It can simply be a personal welcome message, a text, something that references something very specific in the sales conversation you've had with them. Follow up that shows that you are listening, that you know where they are, and you're already thinking about challenges that they might run into. This is completely different from the generic welcome aboard kind of email sequence that you may already have. It's a personalized message that says, I've been thinking about what you specifically talked about regarding the project, the timeline, your concerns, and here's my quick initial thoughts about how we can approach it. If you're just sending out the generic welcome aboard email sequence, that feels like a process. If you take the 5 minutes to go back and look at your sales notes and send a quick text message or voicemail, that feels personal. Now, step number 2 is you need to set expectations clearly, but not sound like a legal document. One of the biggest sources of client frustration for service businesses is when expectations are just not aligned. And it's not because anybody was dishonest, but no one really took the time to explain things properly. Things like, how will you communicate? How often will you communicate? Using what channels? What decisions require the input from the customer? And when are you going to have them make those decisions? What does the first 3 days and the first 30 days look like? What is a realistic timeline before the customer starts seeing results? These conversations might feel a little uncomfortable to have on the very first day because it can feel like you're managing their expectations by dampening them. But the reality is, when a customer knows what to expect from a business, they are far more calm than the ones who have no idea what to expect. So they set their own expectations and then they're disappointed. Calm, happy clients are the ones who are going to refer business to you. Now, the third thing that you want to do is communicate how you're going to handle things when they don't go as planned. And this is the one that people look over entirely. Every customer, somewhere in the back of their mind, is wondering, what happens if something goes wrong? Will they tell me? Will they disappear on me? Will they make it right? When you're going through onboarding with a new customer, that's your opportunity to answer the question before they ask it. Then you don't answer the question by promising to be perfect. You simply demonstrate the character of yourself and your business and let them know that things will inevitably get complicated, and this is how we manage it when we do. So let's look back at the story that I was telling you at the beginning, because I want to be really specific about what my company did during the first 3 very painful months with this new client. First, I was transparent from day one. I didn't pretend the situation was simpler than it was. I didn't promise a timeline that I had no control over. I told her exactly what we were dealing with, what our options were, and what actions I was taking to resolve each obstacle. The second thing I did was communicate consistently. I didn't just send her a text, an email, or give her a call when I had good news. When I hit a wall, she heard from me before she started to wonder if I was still working on it. If I had a short update, I sent it to her. And when things were going well, I let her know. The third thing I did is I never made the struggles we were having her problem. There were things that I needed from her along the way. I needed her oftentimes to call and email the agency that they had fired because they certainly weren't talking to me. But I tried to handle as much of the friction as I could. If there were platform support tickets, document requests, any back and forth with the previous agency that I was able to handle, I tried to handle. I wanted to shield my new customer from as much of the drama as I could so that she could continue to run her business. And last, I kept showing up with steady, calm energy. This is not fake positivity, not false reassurance. I wasn't that rose-colored glasses cheerleader, but I was consistent. I was grounded. I said, this is hard and we're going to get through it, and I'm not going to leave you stranded. None of those 4 things required perfect onboarding situations. All of those things required character that I'm proud to have and proud to see show up in my business. And that's the last thing that I want to talk to you about today. You really don't have to have a flawless process to create a customer for life. Oftentimes, you create far more loyal customers when things do go a little wrong and you go above and beyond to make it right. Because that shows that you have the right values when you're operating your business. Transparency, consistency, taking the burden and all of the blame off of the client, staying steady and grounded. Those are the 4 things that in onboarding or any difficult situation in your business will do more for your client retention and referrals than the most polished, perfect onboarding checklist you could possibly have. Now I'd like to get practical and talk about what a strong onboarding experience can look like for your business, no matter what industry you're in. Within 24 hours of someone signing a contract with you, they should hear from you. Not the automated email that you already have set up, but a personal message. that references something specific about them and their situation. This immediately sets the tone and it says, you're not just a number, you're not a transaction. I know who you are and I'm already thinking about your project. Then we have the kickoff. Whether it's a call, a meeting, a detailed message, kickoff communication needs to have three things: what their next steps are, what you need from them, and how to reach you should they have questions. This needs to be simple, clear, and jargon-free. It should not come with overwhelming details. It just needs to be the things that they need to feel like they know what's going on. Then, somewhere during that first week, you should reach out with an update that they're not asking for. So this isn't like they call it, they send you a text and you're responding to it. This is one where you're just reaching out, not necessarily because you have big news, but simply because reaching out when you're not prompted to communicates something really powerful on a psychological basis. It tells the customer that you're thinking about them and you don't have to be asked to initiate communication. Now, for a contractor, this might be a photo from the job site. For a realtor, it might be a market-specific update that has something to do with their search. Or for a service provider, it might be a note about some early observations that you're making. The content really doesn't matter so much as the habit. The habit is saying, you're on my mind, I'm thinking about you, I'm working on your project. And then when things go sideways, because there's almost always a point where something goes a little bit wrong, don't wait for your client to notice the problem first. If at all possible, you want to be the first to name it and the first to show up with a solution. The first to say, here's what happened and here's what I'm doing about it and here's what you can expect moving forward. Because clients can handle bad news. They can't handle is feeling like someone is hiding it from them. Now we'll come back to that thought in a minute. But let's go back to my customer who at 3 months into our contract, a very difficult, frustrating, messy 3 months, my client looked at me and said, the way you handled this made me a client for life. It's something that I think about a lot because when I was in the middle of those 3 months, I wasn't sure I was doing enough. And I wasn't sure that the relationship would survive the difficulty. But I kept coming back to something I believe. How you show up when things are hard is the rawest, most true version of who you are, both in business and in life. Because easy projects don't reveal character. Difficult, messy projects do. And the clients who stick with you through the difficult, messy projects and come out on the other side saying, I trust you, are the clients who are going to be loyal to you for life. So build your onboarding process. Get in the habit for yourself and your employees and make sure that the values underneath the process are the ones that show up most when that process breaks down. Because inevitably, every process will. And who you are in that moment is what your clients will remember long term. If you would like help building a client experience that creates loyalty from the very first step, I would love to work with you through that. You can schedule some time on my calendar using the link in the show notes or going directly to limitlessimpactagency.com. And if you know someone who just brought on a new client and would like to start the relationship the best way possible, share this episode with them because that first 72 hours after a contract is signed matters far more than most people realize. If something landed for you today, I would be so appreciative if you'd share this episode with one person in your world who needs to hear it, because that's how this show will grow. And I am so grateful for every single share that is made. If you're ready to take what you learned today and put it into work to grow your business, I would absolutely love to talk to you. You can use the link in the show notes or visit limitlessimpactagency.com to schedule your free strategy session. We'll figure out exactly where you need to focus first, but until next week, go do something amazing.